I'm here with the 2023 BMW R nineT. Gorgeous bike. Got a little bit of flooding here, but I decided to do it still in our same spot, even though you can see it's a little bit flooded here. The waves are crazy. It's some special thing here with storms in Southern California. But let's get to the bike. This is a 2023 BMW R nineT, like I said. And we have a boxer style engine here, which is almost 1200 cc's. Boxer means the pistons are going this way and that way, kind of shooting out there. So this is the head actually right here, which means if you lean the bike too far, you start scraping head. So a lot of people, what they'll do is they'll put some sliders on the head and stuff like that if they're actually racing the bike a lot. We also have a shaft input here, meaning there's actually a drive shaft. There's no chain on this bike, kind of like what the GS 1250 does. We have a stock exhaust on here. This is stock, 100% stock. Everything on the bike is stock, and it comes with an Akrapovic muffler on here. And you can barely see it where it says Akrapovic right there. We've got tires here that aren't really the stickiest. This is really meant for a cruising bike. This is a heritage model. It's a throwback to when BMW had the R, I believe the R32, back in, to commemorate the 90-year anniversary of BMW releasing the R32. That's what they call it, the R nineT, I believe. I'll correct it if I'm wrong, but I believe. We also have nice analog controls here. This is really kind of like a heritage type of deal. We still have some creature comforts. We have the LED headlight and tail light, of course. I mean, of course, I don't like the big dongle sitting in the back here. That, of course, needs to be cleaned up. But the R nineT is really, really customizable, and a lot of people do. Especially in Europe, this thing is like a crazy popular bike. Racers even use this bike, even though there's no quick shifter. This bike is real plain, flat out of the box. Even comes with the Brembo brake still. The bike actually weighs 460 pounds wet, but you don't feel it while you're riding the bike. It doesn't feel that heavy. It feels much lighter, but it is quite a heavy bike. So let's see what we can do. Let's get her on the road. Let's test her before and after. We'll be doing dyno testing before and after, and also with DNA air filters. So before and after tuning, and with filters and tuning, to see if there's a big difference there. We'll also be doing 60 through 130 all three ways, stock, with tuning, and the air filters, just in case you guys are curious. This is also an air-cooled bike, meaning there is no radiator here. This is just an oil cooler. Good for cooling oil, of course, but there's no actual radiator. These fins in here, these are designed to take air in and cool the engine off while you're riding. That's also another interesting point about this heritage model. Well, let's get on the road. All right, guys, cruising here on the BMW R nineT. This is the 2023 model, and it's really, really nice to cruise this thing. I mean, it's super comfy. Of course, this is what I'd expect from a heritage model of a bike, with this awesome analog cluster. They're really different from BMW because typically all their stuff is digital at this point. I'm really enjoying riding this thing in here. Like I said before, we have no quick shifter on this model, so it's really just an analog bike, although it does have some BMW creature comforts. We got heated grips, we've got the cruise control, we've got a few things that make the BMW, it usually sets it apart from the rest of the pack, right? The seating position, the seat itself, the way the bike rides, the way it feels down low, this is all good stuff. They do everything right here. The bike itself doesn't have a crazy amount of power, but it has enough power to get out of its own way. We hit second gear. Yeah, that's all of it right there. That's all she's got. So nothing too insane here as far as power goes. In fact, let me turn the traction control off and let me see if I can get this tire up in the air in first gear. Let's see here. That is hilarious. So it'll come up in first gear with just power. That wasn't clutching or anything. That was just powering it up. So it definitely comes up. I started leaning over a little bit sideways. I didn't have a whole lot of speed behind it. Maybe in second gear I could clutch it up or something, but yeah, that was first gear. So we'll just go here and get a nice little review here of just kind of the low speed stuff and how it feels down low, which feels pretty decent, to be honest with you. I mean, it's a nice all-around bike for cruising. I keep on saying it, but it's super comfortable. I'm used to these sport bikes, of course, that really have no comfort whatsoever. They sacrifice comfort for speed and a whole bunch of other stuff, but every once in a while to get on a bike like this and just kind of cruise it around and just kind of look at the beautiful like view, this is nice. This is super nice. I can totally see you spending I think these things start at like 14,000 or something like that on this bike just to kind of cruise it around, you know. But I would probably do a custom one because I like the custom looks of, like, they have some crazy tails, some crazy headlights. I've seen some real crazy custom ones before that look amazing, and this is a good platform for that. And I think if you open this thing up with the different slip-on, and we're going to open up the exhaust valve, we'll put some intakes on this thing, I think it's going to sound nice and aggressive too, as well as giving us some performance gains. Low speed stuff, stop and go. This bike is performing very well. Really have no complaints about it. Low end speed, I mean, I'm super low right now, 2,000 RPM. Doesn't feel bad at all. Of course, no one even notices me because the bike is so quiet. Clutch feels very good. I'm not having any problems finding neutral. The low speed stuff, really well, really good. Even the way it feels, I have this in dynamic mode right now with the, I think it's about a 60, maybe 68 outside right now, or 65 here in SoCal, and it feels good. I got the heated grips on the first setting, and that feels nice. So I think what I'm going to do here is take this thing up to the more high speed stuff and give you guys a review based on how this thing feels in the top end, because while a lot of people will get this thing just to cruise around, some people actually do get this thing to race them. I mean, they race this bike. It's pretty cool, to be honest with you. Alright, here in the top end stuff, we're going to see what a little over 100 horsepower and I think 85 foot-pounds of torque can actually do through this almost 1200cc motor. It actually feels pretty lively, and like I said, 460 pounds wet, so I'm not expecting miracles out of this thing. The braking's pretty decent actually. These Brembos are really good anchors. They were a little cruising bike here. I mean, this thing is pretty good. I'm almost afraid I tip it over too much, I'm going to scrape the heads on this bike. Tip-in feels really nice. I'm trying to clutchless shift the thing. Yeah, the tip-in feels really nice. Low end stuff. Inputs are really nice. I really can't complain. The throttle's a little bit laggy, I'll say. We can try and fix that with the Flash. But the overall feel for the bike kind of nods off on the top end. That's to be expected. It's breathing through a little straw in the front here. Let's see what she's got. Come on, baby. You can do it. Oh, she's got a little bit. She's moving. Come on, come on. Oh, she's not bad at all. Pretty fun little bike. I mean, it's definitely not super bike standard. Wow. Not bad. It's a little bit of a thrill. Of course, I'm used to like super bikes. Something a little more speed on it, but this is nothing to laugh at, honestly. It's a fun little bike. A little more performance mods. This thing will be a blast of the track, to be honest with you. Quick shifter will be really nice on this setup, but they don't come with them. Alright. That was a lot of fun. Well, now that we took care of the top end stuff, I think it's only fair to see what that 60 through 130 is, so let's check that out. Alright, here to do the 20 through 100, I usually do a 60 through 130, but I tried to do a test hit up to 130, and there's just not enough real estate to make this a safe run, so we're just going to do 20 through 100, which is normal. I do this in like the R18, the GS 1250. I do this on the bikes that just don't have the same power as the leader bikes do. So we'll start in second gear, 20 through 130. That'll give us a good breakdown of the mid-range, top end, everything. Let's get it. Alright, 20 through 100, let's go. You guys saw it, that was a 7.17 20 through 100. I know I said 60 through 130 before I started that thing, but like I said, there's not enough real estate there. So 20 through 100, 7.17, still very respectable, and I like it because I started in second gear. We got a very low RPM, so we're testing that mid-range, we're testing the top end, we're testing everything all through it I think it's a very good time for what we've got here on this platform, especially considering how much horsepower it has, a little over 100, 85 foot-pounds of torque, and the weight it has, which is 460 pounds wet, not including the rider. So I think it's time to kind of wrap this up before we take this bike to the dyno and really open her up. What am I noting here? So first, I'm noting the bike, I mean, there's no cooling fan, so I can't say it overheats or anything like that. And I don't have any crazy heat coming to my legs, even from the engine. It's a very comfortable ride in riding position. The seat's extremely comfortable. The arms, the way the clip-ons feel, it's just, everything is nice and comfy about this bike. And I really like this reminiscent. I almost feel like it's almost like wrong to wear a helmet with this thing. I feel like I should be with a leather jacket, just kind of with on my jeans, just kind of riding like it's a 1950s movie or something. But really cool feel to this bike. I don't like the throttle's a little bit lazy when I get into it. I want that to be a little more responsive, and that's just me nitpicking it. It's not that bad stock, honestly. The top end does nod off. The mid-range nods off. There's not enough power in the bike, so we'll see if we can fix the power getting up to that top end, because it really kind of falls on its face up there. Not insanely, but I'm noticing it. And if I'm noticing it, that means it's definitely happening. I'm also excited to try those air filters, see exactly how much power we can make, and see if it makes the bike sound a lot better, because I think it will, honestly. It just sounds so quiet right now. Even when I was in traffic, the bike just sounded so quiet. I feel like I had to flash my headlights the whole time I was riding, because I mean, a lot of people say loud pipes save lives, but it's true. If they hear you coming, you know, it's not a bad thing. I just don't want it screaming in my ear and causing tinnitus either. So there's a kind of happy medium for me as far as how loud a bike should be. And this thing is so quiet. I'm hearing the wind over the engine. I don't know what RPM I'm at unless I'm looking at the gauge. That to me is, it shouldn't be something like that at all. When I get on it, I can barely hear anything. All I can feel is a rumble, basically. So we get this thing over to the dyno, we'll test it stock, we'll test it with the tune, and we'll test it tuning with the filters, all three ways, and we'll see which one's the best way to go. I'm over here at Lee Cycle in San Diego, our San Diego dealer, and I have the 2023 BMW R9T strapped down on the dyno, and she is ready to make some numbers. Let's see what she does. We got blue here, which is our modified file, our final modified file, and we also have red here. The red is going to be stock. Now we check partial throttle sweeps, we check a million things when we do these. We even check top speeds, and the top speed is raised only because we've raised that rev limiter. So it went from that 140 top limiter to about 155, and that's only because we raised the rev limiter. There is no rev limiter in there that we saw. So again, we're looking at this right now. We're getting a couple wheel horsepower across the board here. It really starts separating right about here. About a little over 5,000 RPM, that's where it really starts separating. And we're getting a difference of, I'd say about, I mean, we're right around there at, 8 wheel horsepower right there at the top end, which this is all the fun zone right here. This is all the fun zone. Not only that, but fixing the fueling and a few other things. We've gotten the throttle a little bit smoother on this bike, a little less jumpy, especially when we're going down low. I can feel what I'm getting on the dyno, meaning that first initial sweep when you hit about 2,000 RPM, it feels a lot more controlled, a lot more refined. And up here, of course, we got more of an RPM limiter, which basically means it's gonna be less shifting of the track, less shifting in general, and more of a power band, wider and broader power band. Now, I know you're probably asking about this dip and canyon here. This has nothing to do with the air fuel, it has nothing to do with timing. This has everything to do with how this bike breathes. And it breathes through a little straw here on the front. And we're over here in a 50 state legal system here. I mean, this is a stock as a rock bike. Beautiful example. And we've also got the exhaust valve where we can actually open the exhaust valve up only in gear, and then in neutral, we're gonna keep that thing shut. Now that's a feature we're offering. We can keep it open at all time if you want, but I know a lot of people, they're in HOAs, stuff like that, and they might want this exhaust valve closed for startup and warm up, and then when they get going, they want it open, they want to hear the bike.
You can make that as a special request when you're ordering, and I'll just give you guys an example here real quick of what this looks like. So pretty cool feature, and we're adding that onto all newer BMWs. We just decided to test it on this bike, and it works great. I was testing it here in the dyno, worked the entire time. No issues whatsoever. And again, back to these numbers, very impressive. I can't wait to see what this thing does in the street. And to get these numbers, we played with ignition timing. We actually have fueling, you know, the torque limiter. There's a whole bunch of stuff we go through, to be honest with you. But we also have wide bands on this bike. So there's a wide band right there. The 5-wire, there's a 4-wire on the other side that monitors, and we can actually do a full-time closed loop. So that means we are commanding this bike to hit a certain AFR at all times. So that means your fueling is always good. So it doesn't matter if you're going up in the canyons, if you're going by sea level, different atmospheric conditions, this thing will trim the entire time to get a perfect air-fuel ratio for that boxer engine. Now that we got this awesome look on the bike, I think she's ready to go back in the dyno again, and we're gonna see if we can make any bit more power than we did with the stock filters. And look how cool that is, just hanging off the side of the bike right there. Now let's see the important part, which is the numbers. And I'll kind of give you a reference here. Green is going to be completely stock, no tuning, nothing. Blue is going to be our tuning, and red is going to be our tuning with the air filters. Now keep in mind, I didn't change the tuning. Our tuning compensates for these air filters completely. And there's nothing to be done here. We've actually lost power with the air filters from 4,000 to 7,000 RPM. But after that, we gained 10 wheel over our tuning, which is already light years ahead of the stock tuning. This is wild. So when you're actually shifting at the track here, you're only going down about 7,400 RPM. I tested this in the dyno. So you're staying in this power band while you're at the track. So for track people, this is the mod to have, because in first gear, this bike will actually pick up the tire. I mean, it's pretty aggressive in first gear for what it is. And then as long as you're mindful of you need to be high in the RPM at the track, this is a win mod right here for track people. And the swap, super easy. All you gotta do is pull off the stock tube, bolt this in. I mean, we're talking maybe a minute. This is one of the fastest air filter changes I've ever done on a bike, period. So it's super easy to swap back and forth if that's what you'd like to do as well. But I realize not a lot of people are taking this bike and going, I'm gonna track my R9T. But for those that are, this is the option here. I haven't seen comparison like this, so I wanted to show you guys. And blue, of course, is gonna be just our tuning, which is just fine if you're just streeting the bike. You can see right here in that mid-range, we're not losing anything over stock, and we still gain up top. And it feels great in the street, honestly. But this mod right here just sounds awesome. Great for track people, easy to swap. I mean, there's so many benefits to just doing this. It's great, and the sound, amazing. And for those of you wondering why we're losing power with air filters, because now we're getting more air, so why wouldn't it make more power, right? Well, we are making more power. We're making more power up top. We're just losing in the mid-range because it's getting too much air. So we may actually formulate a system on this bike, maybe a little velocity stack that's gonna be like a restrictor plate almost, like you see on WRXs, whatever, for rally cars. And that'll actually restrict airflow going into the head. And that may either keep the same power and give us the mid-range back, or we'll lose a little bit of power up top and we'll gain that mid-range back. But that's for another day, more testing. Now it's time to get this thing and go riding.
What's up, guys? I'm back here on the 23 BMW R9T post-flash, and I did leave the air filters on. I rode it both ways, guys, and this way is so much more satisfying for sound. Mid-range power is about the same as stock. Stock lifts up a little bit more, but this is so much of an even curve. It's so much more predictable on horsepower and torque. I actually prefer this way more than I prefer it without the filters. And the sound, listen to this thing. Sounds amazing. And just making my way over to Coronado here in San Diego, I wanted to show you guys the view. The view over here is so nice. You just get to see all of Coronado Island there from the bridge here, all of downtown San Diego. Such a nice cruise to have. So far I'm noticing a lot of like great induction noise from this bike, and I mean amazing. This sounds like a heritage model. Like we've got the bike that looks heritage, but it sounded so quiet. It sounded like a kitten purring, and then at best it sounded like a pissed off generator. Now it sounds like a real heritage model. I mean, it didn't sound like that before, and that's thanks to the exhaust valve open, these intakes on both sides of the bike here, and of course our tuning. It makes this thing sound so aggressive. It feels so nice and smooth. The throttle delivery back in there, love it. And I'm not noticing the power or torque decrease we're getting from these filters. I'm not noticing it in the mid-range. It still feels just as lively with and without the filters. I've tested it both ways, and when I do that 60 through 130 testing, you guys will see I'm going to do it tuned. Sorry, I'll do it stock, then tuned, and I'll do it tuned with filters. I'll do all three 60 through 130s just to show you guys the difference of what these filters can do. Not only just the sound here, but everything else. And I mean, just the stock exhaust here, which looks like two sippy straws sitting out of the back of this thing. Now it sounds so great. I can't even imagine the sound coming out of this bike is from these two little sippy straws. I mean, that sounds amazing. It's so much fun. It just has its own characteristic as far as these bikes go. Each one is different, and this one really does get the heritage nailed down when you get this tuning with the air filters. It sounds great. It really just matches the whole profile. We still got plenty of power here, guys. I mean, this will pick up the tire, no problem. Of course, I probably shouldn't be doing that in Coronado here, but just showing you guys, it will pick up the tire without any issues whatsoever. Low end stuff going really well. Tip in's fine. Throttle response is fine. I'm also going to be testing gas mileage here before and after, making sure we're not losing any gas mileage. Of course, when you get a Flash, people tend to say, oh, I've lost some mileage. Dog's just hanging out. People tend to say, oh, I've lost mileage now that I got the Flash. Well, you probably got a heavier hand now that you got the Flash. That's kind of what we're talking about here. You get a heavier hand, you start stepping on the throttle more to test the tuning. Yeah, the gas mileage is going to go down. But if you're testing it just like you normally would, keep that nice light hand, the gas mileage is nominal. I've been testing this on a lot of our Flashes. Low speed stuff definitely good. No issues with stalling. These startups are cleaner now as far as cold starts. We don't have to wait for it to stop staring at me now. The cold starts are really good now, and the fact that I'm putting this thing in neutral and now the exhaust valve is closed, I'm not annoying anyone. Not that I was with that open because it's a stock system, but it's always a nice option to have when, you know, there you go. And then you can't even hear it now. All right, so I'm over here. I'm going to take a couple photos right here on the beach. These should be some nice shots. Look how gorgeous this day looks. January in California. Can't beat it. All right, leaving Coronado right now. Man, that sounds so good. Now I'm going to take this thing on the freeway, get a few miles in, and I'll touch base with you guys when I'm about to hit the top end stuff. What I just got done riding this thing on the freeway performed great. Has a lot more attitude, I guess you call it now, because now I'm feeling the engine. I can actually feel it now while I'm riding it, instead of before where it felt like I was just riding a piece of metal. Now this thing has personality. I don't know why it wasn't like this stock. This is exactly how it should have been from the factory. And riding it for about 40 miles on the freeway, I can tell you guys, the filters don't hit my legs whatsoever. I know they kind of stick out a little bit here, but even putting as close as I can to everything, I'm not hitting these filters. A lot of good power here. I'm not noticing at all that mid-range decrease we're seeing in the dyno graph. I'm not feeling it. And maybe it's because it kind of goes up and down stock. But when it's tuned, you can see the actual post flash with the filters actually gives this bike a really nice curve. It's nice and flat rather than having a bunch of bumps in it like it does with the tuning or with the stock tuning. The filters kind of mellow the whole thing out and just give it a whole lot of top end. All right, here's the top end stuff. And of course, that sound. First thing I noticed. Now we are getting a lot more top end power, and the power's a lot more even through the range. It's nice, steady. There's no surprises, there's no jolts, there's no jerks. Very, very nice feel to it. And we're not overpowering the chassis or the brakes or anything. It's a nice, even power for this thing that we've gained up here. We're just not nosing over anymore when we get to that higher RPM. The gearing seems to be also perfect for this kind of power too. Not too much, not too little. Let's see how the low end tip end stuff is here. Whoa, I actually put it in neutral, then I put it in gear and it slid out a little bit. Not bad. The tip end's very nice. Really could use a quick shifter on this thing. Oh yeah, feels really good. Nice through turns. Balanced, balanced, balanced. Feels great. Not overpowering nothing. Yeah. Really nice. Nice even power. Even to come out of turns, it feels great. The bike does feel really balanced, especially for what it is. Brakes are great too. This bike isn't overpowered in any way. It just has a nice sound. The power is nice and even. Everything is there now. Really an enjoyable ride at this point. The sound is awesome. I keep saying it, but it really does fit this thing well. Now that's finished. Let's see what we can do on the 60 through 130. I'll test it both ways. I'm going to test it with just the tuning and then tuning with filter, and you guys will see the difference between those two, and then we'll compare all three of them so you guys can see exactly what this thing looks like and how the improvements look. All right guys, 20 through 100 with our tuning. Let's do it. Wheel came up a little bit, 1-2 shift. Alright guys, all set here to do the 20 through 100 with the Dyno filters and tuning. Let's see what she does. Alright, let's try this 20 through 100 and let's see what this soundtrack sounds like. It sounds pretty crazy coming from the motor. Take a good listen. So there we have it. We have a 6.9 tuned versus the 7.1 stock, and 6.6 tuned with the filters versus 7.1 stock. Very good stuff. I mean, you notice that 7.1 stock, we had almost a degree of slope versus the after tuning stuff. I always give the benefit of the doubt to stock. So those are great gains. I mean, great gains for this bike. The improved RPM limiter, especially the top end stuff, really helps with being able to wring this thing out, get to that power band, and keep a nice longer power band on the bike. It just kind of fits the personality better for the bike. So let's kind of go over what the benefits of the Flash are overall on this thing. On the cold starts, I noticed the start is a little bit better, meaning it's not idling high, it's not obnoxious like the S1000 RR is stock. But this one's a little bit higher than it should be. We've leveled out that idle RPM altogether. I'm not noticing any gas mileage deficiencies, and I will be testing that. The last thing I do here will be testing it from one gas station to another that I always fill up on in both ways. And depending on how much I put into this tank here, whether it be too little or too much, I'll know kind of roughly if this wastes more gas. At least I can quantify it roughly like that. We've also got a lot more power. The power band's more even now, and that top end doesn't slouch as much anymore with tuning. If you do tuning with stacks, we're getting a whole bunch of power. It's 16 wheel horsepower over stock. So over that stock, 16 wheel horsepower over it with the extended rev line. Customers run these things for a long time. Nate Kearney included, who's the BMW brand ambassador. No issues with the bike at all with that extended RPM limiter. And if you want to keep it stock, you can request it stock too. It's not a big deal, honestly. The track riders will love the extended RPM though, because this thing really does need to carry a little more than it does stock. So it's kind of a nice benefit. The throttle feels a lot better now as well as far as the tip-in goes. I'm noticing a difference. It's a lot more smooth, a lot more predictable. I couldn't even hear that stock. Like, I couldn't hear the engine or anything stock. For all of you guys that have the R9Ts that have mods, a lot of people mod these things crazy. We do have tuning for anyone that has different mod combos, track people. We can go through the list of people that we have tuning for. So the benefits aren't just for stock, even though with stock, we're getting a lot of benefits out of the bike. All right, good news, guys. I just left the gas station. I'm not noticing any difference in gas mileage. And I just do this point to point like I did stock. I did 1 point in stock, rode a certain way all the way to the next point, and I did the same exact way with the way the mods are now, air filter and tuning. No discernible difference in the gas mileage whatsoever. So that's going to do it for our ride today, guys, and our complete review. I guess I'll see you guys in the next one.